Welcome to the review for the 4th of July midweek games, and there was definitely a lot of fireworks, and there was a lot of goals that was scored during this midweek, and there was also a lot of blowouts that happened in this midweek, mostly on Wednesday's game, and most importantly, we had the longest game of the year, a game that ended all the way to 2 a.m. Eastern Time and 11 p.m. my time, and that even if I didn't want to do this review because of the fact that it's 4th of July and you got the fireworks in the background, I probably would have done the next day too, because there's no way in the world I would be start doing a review video at 11:40 my time. But that being said, let's talk about some of these games, and we start off. The first game is NYCFC with a 3-0 win against Seattle, and really this game was over before the kickoff actually began. I mean, how do I know that exactly is the case? Well, it turns out that Brian Schmetzer decided that he's gonna rotate his team heading into this game, which I find it very odd because, why would you? I mean, I understand that we had you had a lot of games, and I think this is like the third game in 7 days for the Sounders, and that they have to, of course, go to NYCFC, have to travel all the way across the other side of the country on a short rest to play this midweek games. So obviously, guys are gonna be very tired about this, but still, I feel really kind of dumbfounded why did Schmitzer decided to basically go with a reserve team against probably the hottest team right now in MLS, and that when I saw that, I knew this was over. I really doubt that Seattle was gonna pull one off. Now, to the credit of Seattle, they did hung in there in this game, and in the first half, there was no score, and that they did had some chances to potentially get the first goal, but so did NYCFC. But in the second half, that's when the quality start to show. Morales scores from Medina to give NYCFC a 1-0 lead in the 58th minute. Then Medina scores from Castellano, and it looked like Castellano was, when he struck this one, it looked like it was going to go in, but then Medina kind of took a bit of a stab on it, so it looked like this goal was supposed to be Castellanos, but Medina kind of stole it, and, it looked like, when I saw that on the replay, it looked like Medina was in an offside position, but it turns out he wasn't, and it looks like Jovan Jones just kept him on the back post. So NYCFC with a 2-0 lead. Then they, of course, add the cherry on the top when Ebenezer Afori score an absolute banger of a goal from Alexander Ring. Something very similar to the goal that he scored earlier this season between NYCFC and Orlando City, where he took a strike from about 30 yards out, similar to this goal in this game against Seattle. And that, of course, is your final score of this game, as NYCFC had 20 shots compared to 14 to the Sounders, had 8 shots on goal compared to 4 that the Sounder has, 10 shots off target compared to 5 that Seattle has, 2 shots that was blocked compared to 5 that Seattle has, and NYCFC had 62% possession compared to 38% possession. And like I said, it was pretty clear that NYCFC was going to win this, especially when the Sounders elected to not really go with their strongest team. And again, I kind of found a little dumbfounded, because when you're playing against the toughest team and you're not putting your strongest 11, yeah, this is there's only going to be one way to find out how that's going to go, which is probably not going to work. And especially the fact that the Sounders are playing Columbus next. Why does Schmetzer decide not to rest his guys against Columbus, a team that is much easier to face if they put their reserve in, and that it's a team that is struggling right now? Why in the world did he decide to rest his guys against one of the best and one of the hottest team right now in MLS is just kind of a big question. But NYCFC won't care. They got all 3 points again, and they extend their unbeaten run to 12 games right now. And now they're going to have a showdown against Portland during this weekend, and that's definitely going to be a very interesting kind of matchup. But next up, now, I know when you saw this scoreline, you are probably shocked. And I was kind of shocked when I found out that at halftime in this game, it was 5-0 in favor of Chicago. I don't think there has been any team so far this season have scored 5 goals in the first half, and certainly you wouldn't think that this would be the game that will happen. I mean, this would be the last game you would think Chicago would score 5 goals against Atlanta. But the thing is, the thing that kind of doesn't shock me about this resort is that this is what Chicago can do. Like, they definitely have the talent to go against any other team in MLS, but the problem is this season they just haven't shown that consistently, and that we just have shown so many different sides of a Chicago team that can be very good, a Chicago team that can be very bad, and a Chicago team that looked like the best team in the league in this game against Atlanta. And this is also what happened when you can finish your chances, because remember how the last game in that game against the Redbulls where Chicago was shooting from everywhere but they couldn't put the ball in the back of the net? Well, in this game it was a different story, and in the first half they make sure they put away those chances. And the rout all started when Calvo scores from Nicolas Gaitan. Gaitan had a monster game in this one with 3 assists and a goal. Then he, of course, assisted Sapon to give Chicago a 2-0 lead. And then things go bad to worse for Atlanta as they went down to 10 men when the LGP, of course, got sent off for a denial of goal score opportunity via a handball. Originally, it wasn't called, but they look at VAR and it was pretty clear that Gonzalo Perez basically handled that ball, and he was pretty much the last defender there, so that's a denial of goal score opportunity. He gets sent off. Gaitan, of course, bears the penalty to make it 3-0, and I just had a feeling this is gonna get really, really ugly, especially if this is the Chicago team is firing on all cylinder. And they continue that route when Sapon scored his second from Nicolas Gaitan to make it 4-0 in favor of Chicago after just 37 minutes. Then Herbert scores from Calvo to make it 5-0 in favor of Chicago in this game. And all the people that hate Atlanta and all those people that probably have despised Atlanta is pretty much enjoying this and pretty much just grabbing the popcorn right now. Like, it was so funny that the DC United Twitter handle even kind of reply with a gif of a person kind of grabbing the popcorn, and that, yeah, I mean, this was really a big shocker, in that this really reminds me of what happened last season when they were 4-0 down against Houston, except this was even worse now that they are down 5-0. Now, they did get a goal back when Vasquez, of course, scores a penalty. Chicago, unfortunately, gave away a penalty, which Vasquez, of course, put it away, but that was all the scoring that Atlanta had. And in the second half, Chicago kind of starts showing the same problem that they had against the Redbulls, where they had a lot of chances, but they couldn't quite put it away. But the good news is they're already up 5-1 at that point, so I don't think that should be a big of a concern. And yeah, that of course is your final score of this game, and Chicago had 24 shots compared to just 4 that Atlanta has, 10 shots on goal compared to just 1 that Atlanta had, 9 shots off target compared to 3 that Atlanta has, 5 shots that was blocked compared to none that Atlanta has, and Chicago had 71% possession compared to just 29% possession that Atlanta has. I mean, it doesn't get more one-sided than this, and in my opinion, this has got to be the worst performance ever Atlanta has shown ever since they come into the league. Like, this is even way worse than what happened against Houston, where they lost 4-0, because at least in the second half they kind of show something. Yeah, in this game they just didn't show up for the full 90 minutes, and I'm not sure if this is because of the fact that they're already thinking about the Redbulls game, and that I know I didn't mention this in the preview, but I feel like this was kind of a trap game for Atlanta, knowing the fact that they got the Redbulls, that got that big showdown on the weekend, that they're so focused on this one, and then they forgot that they also have to play Chicago. But whatever it is, clearly they didn't show up in this game. I mean, they probably thought that this match week was a week off for them, but turns out that wasn't the case, and they paid the ultimate price for that. And what's also an ultimate price that they pay is that LGP will not be available in the next game, and that is definitely going to be a bit of a blow, because LGP has been their starting center back, and that they're going to be without them. Now, the good news is, as I mentioned a little later in this preview, or in this review, the team that they're facing, the Redbulls, yeah, they actually suffer a more catastrophic blow in terms of red cards and suspension for the next game, and that they also suffer a similar fate that Atlanta suffer, which is an embarrassing loss on the road. But of course, I will get to that, and that, certainly for Chicago, congratulations of getting 3 points. Now the question is, can they do that again in the next game? The answer is probably not, because if you've seen the pattern that Chicago has been, it seemed like whenever they have a good game, they tend to always struggle to follow up that. But we shall see how it goes, and for Atlanta, they just gotta have to forget about this game and focus on that big showdown against the Red Bulls during the weekend. Speaking of a game to forget, the Quakes. Yeah, this was definitely a game to forget. And in many ways, this was a game that was very similar to the LAFC game, and a game that is started to really just kind of prove my point in terms of the pattern I'm start seeing with the Quakes, which is, while they play great soccer, and that they play some of the most entertaining brand of soccer that any team in the league is playing, they're having so much trouble in terms of finishing. And this was a classic example of it, especially in the second half, where we were just putting a shooting gallery against Minnesota. And while I will say this, Vito Monet had an absolute crazy game, and that he pretty much just stood on his head and just stole this game from Minnesota. The Quakes, they got to be more clinical in the second half. Now, in the first half, the Quakes got off to a poor start when Quintero scores from Finley and Ibarra. I wrote Vega should have saved that, because it looked like when Quintero hit that one in, Vega got a hand to it. It looked like he probably should have saved it, but he didn't. He got a hand to it, but it still go into the back of the net. And Vega, as I mentioned with him, he's been very inconsistent this season, and it seemed like every time when he has a couple of good games, he was due to have a bad game, and this was the game that he was due to have a bad one. But at the same time, Quintero, this is his first goal. I'm happy to see him finally kind of broke out of that drought, although it's been pretty clear that Quintero, for the last couple of games with the way that he's been performing for Minnesota, he was due to score a goal, like especially with the assists, the amount of assists that he had in the last game against FC Cincinnati. He was definitely due for a goal, so he finally got it here and give Minnesota a 1-0 lead. And then I wrote Quakes look very sluggish, and that they just look very slow in the first half. And I'm not surprised the fact that they look very slow, because Almeida decided to start with the same starting 11, which, I understand the fact that we have been pretty successful in the last two games with this starting 11, and I have said that if it ain't broken, don't fix it. But at the same time, you also got to factor in the fatigue level, and the fact that when you look at the last game against the Galaxy, they really pour a lot of energy into that game, and the fact that they have to go on a midweek trip to Minnesota and have to fly not really all the way across the other side of the country, but to pretty much the Midwest here. I just feel like the fatigue is definitely going to be an issue in this game, and it definitely looked like it in the first half when the attack just looked really slow, and it just looked like they just out of gas before we even hit the second half. But before halftime, as I thought that we were going to head to halftime down 1-0, Tommy Thompson scores to get the equalizer, and this was definitely a very lucky goal and a very fortunate goal for the Quakes, because when Eriksson delivered this free kick, Tommy Thompson know nothing about this, and it basically just deflected off of his chest and goes into the back of the net. So a bit of fortune there for us, and that Tommy Thompson, now he has had a multi-goal season, which is the first time that he has ever had in his career, and probably these last two goals that Tommy Thompson has scored are some of the weirdest and some of the most luckiest goal you will ever see. But I don't care about that, because at that point we tied the game up. That was definitely, I thought, was a game changer, considering the fact that maybe we can carry that momentum in the second half. Unfortunately, that was not the case, because Minnesota retake the lead, and of all players that you would think that would score the go-ahead goal, I don't think a lot of people would thought Michael Boxall would score the next goal. And one thing I noticed with Minnesota in this game is that they really pushed their center back forward in this game. And this is also one of the weakness of the man marking system that Almeida has. Besides the fact that it's vulnerable at times when team counter against us. When you have this man marking system, there's always going to be one guy that's going to be completely unmarked, and it usually is going to be the center back of the opposition team. So that center back usually kind of trying to push men forward, and in this case, it looked like Minnesota exactly did that. And it's also kind of similar to what they did in the last time when they faced the Quakes earlier this season, where they really just pushed their center back forward, and that really caused us a lot of problem. They did the same thing here, and once again, we didn't learn from the same mistake as last time of them pushing the center back forward and just not really contain him. And Michael Boxall was just wide open in the 18-yard box, and who basically slots it home to give Minnesota a 2-1 lead. Now, obviously, I know a lot of teams won't do this, because when you decide to push a center back forward, you are definitely going to get exposed at the back. And I think if the Quakes wasn't like this fatigue heading into this game, they can definitely catch Minnesota on the break with the speed that we had in the wing. But it just feels like, because of the fact that we were kind of fatigued a little bit, that's why Minnesota was able to be successful to do this. But to be fair, after that goal, Quakes really kind of took over, and it almost felt like, you know how I said that this team looked fatigued? Yeah, for whatever reason, after that Boxall goal, the team just flipped a switch. Like, it almost felt like the team was, their gas level was kind of like at E. All of a sudden, after the Boxall goal, it just turns to F, and it just filled up automatically, because they absolutely dominated Minnesota after that goal. And God forbid, how in the world did they not score a goal? Like, pretty much every single Quakes attacker had a chance to score a goal in the second half, and yet somehow, in some way, we couldn't quite find the equalizer. And as much as we continue to push man forward to get the equalizer, the longer that we didn't get that equalizer, the more that I feel like this is just going to be a lost cause, and that eventually Minnesota is going to catch us at the back, because we were pushing so many men forward. And that is exactly what happened in the 92nd minute when Molino scores from Opara and Mason Toy. What a ball this was from Aiko Opara. And Kevin Molino, I mean, he is just been revitalizing these last couple of games. Like, this is a guy that has pretty much lost his starting 11 job and pretty much comes off the bench, and that he just came back from the torn ACL injury that he had last year. And now him coming off the bench and making a impact to this Loons team, it is just incredible to see, and what a remarkable story that is. And that he, of course, scores this goal from Opara and Toy, and it's always good to see Mason Toy gets another assist. I mean, I'm actually starting really liking this Mason Toy kid, because he definitely has the talent to be a very good player in MLS. But yeah, that of course is the final score of this game, as Minnesota is able to walk away with a 3-1 victory and now climb all the way up to 4th place in the Western Conference, which is the highest that they have ever climbed in the table, not only this season, but in their entire franchise history. For Minnesota, in terms of the shots, and this is where you're going to start seeing why the stats sometimes doesn't define the game, because the Quakes had 27 shots compared to 13 that Minnesota had, 8 shots on goal compared to 4 that Minnesota had, 9 shots off target compared to 7 that Minnesota has, 10 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that Minnesota has, and possession-wise, 64% possession compared to 36% that Minnesota had. We absolutely dominated Minnesota in every category. The problem is, one team were being more clinical, the other wasn't, and unfortunately the Quakes fell into that victim again, where our lack of finishing cost us all 3 points, or cost at least get a point on the road in this game. So hopefully the Quakes can shake this off. Obviously, unfortunately, as much as I don't want to say this was a bad loss, because the performance wasn't that bad, it is kind of a bad loss when you have everybody else have been able to win around you, and now you push that you basically push yourself all the way down below the red line. But the good news for the Quakes is that since they are only having a 2-point gap on Minnesota right now, and that there's all the teams above them is literally like just inches away from them, and that the Western Conference is just so tight between 4th through 8th right now. If they can get a win against RSL, which I hope they do in that must-win game at home, then they can find themselves go above the red line. And for Minnesota, it's a good win for them, but the thing is, they got to have to keep going because, as I mentioned, it's a very tight Western Conference race, and even though they're in 4th place right now, which seems like a very good position to be in the playoffs, when you look at the table, yeah, it's a very tight rope, and that, for Minnesota, if they slip up in their next meeting against Montreal, they can find themselves below the red line, depending on what other team, of course, does. But moving on into the next match is another 3-1 result, and this time it's actually in favor of the away team, which is the Union, with a 3-1 win over Orlando City. There was actually a 45-minute rain delay in this game, so this game, of course, started late. But when this game started, Orlando City actually took a 1-0 lead, and it's Chris Mueller who gets a rare start in this game, and he scored a goal in this one 8 minutes in for Orlando City to give a 1-0 lead. Like, I just don't understand why he doesn't get more playing, well, not more playing time, but just start game after game for Orlando City, because he definitely has the talent, and that he definitely is one of the main goal scorers that Orlando City has. So why in the world do you just keep him on the bench and keep him coming off as a substitute to make impact when he could have just done it from minute number 1? But he, of course, scored to give Orlando City a 1-0 lead. Then Philly gets the equalizer, and it's the red-hot Kasper Shibilko scoring from Montero to give Philly a 1-1 lead. I mean, Shibilko, he just cannot stop scoring goals right now. Like, he is probably one of the most underrated player right now, and a guy that a lot of people don't know that he's been really the main goal scorer for Philly right now. And then after that, Philly really took control after that equalizer. Orlando City had chances to get the second goal, but Philly, once they got the equalizer, they absolutely took control of the game. And it kind of also helped the fact that they were giving a man advantage after Janssen got sent off of a studs-up tackle to, of course, I forgot who exactly made a stud-up tackle, but Orlando City was down to 10 men at that point, and in the second half, Philly, of course, take advantage of that man advantage when, once again, Shibilko scores from Bedoya and Medunian to give Philly a 2-1 lead and give Philly the first lead of the game. They would then add another one when Fafa Pico scored from Aronson and Montero to make it 3-1 in favor of Philly. And then things get bad to worse for Orlando City because Sasha Kleshin gets sent off when he stomped on Montero to reduce Orlando City to just 9 men in this game. And the good news for Orlando City is Philly didn't really score any goal after the fact that Orlando City went down to 9 men. The bad news is they still lost this game, and that both of those players will not be available when the reverse fixture of this match will take place this weekend between the Union and Orlando City. Shots in this game, Orlando City had 13 shots compared to 22 that Philly has. 9 shots on goal compared to 3 that Orlando City has. 9 shots off target compared to 5 that Orlando City has. 4 shots that was blocked compared to 3 that Orlando City has. And Philly had 58% possession compared to 42% possession that Orlando City has. So for the Union, good bounce back win after that loss against NYCFC. And in this game, they show why they're in the top of the Eastern Conference. As for Orlando City, this has been kind of the story of this season. They have a good performance, then the very next game, they can't really follow that up. And it isn't really the fact that they had a lot of shots in this game. I mean, they had 13 shots in this game, which isn't really seems a lot when they're kind of like averaging like 17 and 18 shots every single game. And it wasn't just the finishing that let them down in the, well, it wasn't because of the finishing that let them down. It was because of the fact that once they got multiple players sent off, and that Philly, of course, find their next gear, that's when they pretty much got out quality in this game by a Union team that is very, very good right now in the Eastern Conference. But next up, so for all those people that thinking that LAFC could potentially go on a bit of a losing streak, and that for all those people that was hoping that they can be on a bit of a slump. Unfortunately, your wish was not granted in this game, and LAFC were back to being what they are, which is just them completely running over teams every single week. And in this game, they did it to SKC as they destroyed SKC with a 5-1 victory. And this rout all started when Ramirez scores in the 28th minute to give LAFC a 1-0 lead over SKC. Then it gets more uglier in the second half when Rossi scores from Ramirez to double the lead for LAFC. Vela then scored his league high 18 goals this season from Rossi to give a 3-0 lead in favor of LAFC. And at that point, yeah, it's safe to say that LAFC pretty much got this in the bag, and that it's not really whether or not if they can win at that point, it's how many goals that they can win. And in this game, they really looked like they were very angry about the last resort, and that they are really looking to try to prove everybody that they are the best team in the league, even though they technically don't have to, because we know that they are the best team in the league right now. Then in the 82nd minute, SKC had a chance to get a goal back, but Shawi, of course, missed a penalty, and it's very interesting to see what happened to Ilie taking penalty for SKC, because Ilie Sanchez for a long time has been the penalty kick taker for SKC, but for whatever reason, Peter Vermees decided to not put him as a penalty kick taker, and now it's just Shawi, of course, taking the penalty, which Shawi hasn't really been that good from the spot this season. So, yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing to see. But eventually, SKC did get one back when Kwase scores from Ilie to give SKC a slim hope of maybe getting something out of this game. But that slim hope quickly was destroyed because 4 minutes later, Zelaya scores from Vela and Rossi to increase the lead for LAFC to 4-1. And then Al Munir scores from Gwyn to put the cherry on the top to give LAFC a 5-1 victory. And that is the final score of this game. For SKC, in terms of the shots, they actually had 21 shots compared to 11 that LAFC had. Both teams had 7 shots on goal, 9 shots off target compared to 3 that LAFC had, 5 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that LAFC had, and SKC had 62% possession compared to 38% possession. So while when you look at the stats, it wasn't you would think that SKC probably should have deserved a little bit more out of this game. The problem is SKC were not being very clinical, and it seemed like every time when LAFC go on the attack, they were going to score a goal. And that is exactly what happened in this game. They were ruthless in this game in terms of finishing, and unfortunately, SKC find that out the hard way. And yeah, I mean, this is definitely not a very good showing. And I know that I've been saying whenever a team get destroyed by LAFC, I would say that, no shame of losing big to LAFC because they've been doing this to everybody. But the thing about SKC is that this is supposed to be a team that I thought in the beginning of the season was going to be one of the best team in the Western Conference, and boy did that prediction is started to go really badly. And I think I even predict them to finish top. Yeah, that has gone terribly wrong, and I can't wait until I look at it at the end of the season and show how wrong I was putting SKC as a team that actually was the class of the Western Conference. But moving on into the next match is the Redbulls. So they actually suffered 2 losses in this game. One of them was getting destroyed 4-0 against Houston, and the other one was losing Morello and Kaku in this game, and that they will be suspended in the next one. Like, if things cannot get worse for the Redbulls in this game, it just gets worse with those sending off, and that those 2 guys are going to be huge miss for the Redbulls heading into that showdown against Atlanta. And for Houston, this was a huge win for them, and a win that they absolutely needed. And for Albert Valise, yeah, he basically showed up in this game, and he had a monster game in this one. And he started the show when he, of course, assisted Mauro Manotas to give Houston a 1-0 lead. My favorite connection there, of course, scoring a goal. Always put a big smile to my face when I see that happening. And And then heading into the second half, Thomas Martinez scores an absolute golazo to give Houston a 2-0 lead. And this was after a couple of minutes ago where he missed an open net where he basically bounced it off the post. And it's good to see that he, of course, did redeem himself a little bit by scoring an absolute amazing goal to give Houston a 2-0 lead. Then Elise scores from Kyoto to make it 3-0 in favor of Houston. That Honduran connection was very strong in this goal for the Dynamo. Then things gets worse for the Redbulls. As I mentioned, Murillo got sent off in the 83rd minute for his second yellow card. Then Elise basically iced the game. Well, Elise didn't just ice the game, but just put the cherry on the top from Figueroa to give Houston a 4-0 lead over the Redbulls. And then it was pretty clear that the Redbulls were absolutely frustrated about this, and they really lost their cool late in the game because Figueroa, to be fair, he did kind of instigate this situation when he kind of stomped on Kaku, but Kaku just immediately reacted very violently. And it's not the first time we've seen Kaku lose his cool in-game. And, I know that Figueroa probably might get a hefty fine for this and might get an additional game of suspension because of instigating this whole situation. But if you're Kaku and you know that there's a big game heading into the next in the weekend against Atlanta, and that you're one of the most important player on the attack, you cannot lose your cool in that moment. You cannot not get frustrated the fact that you lost 4-0. And I know it's easier said to done when it's like 4-0, but when you have a big game like that, and that is the moment to lose your cool, that is just not right. And now for the Redbulls, they are going to be very short-handed heading into the game against Atlanta, and that they basically just lost one of their best defender and one of their best attacker heading into this game against Atlanta. Now, for the shots in this game, Houston had 14 shots compared to 11 that the Redbulls had, 5 shots on goal compared to 3 that the Redbulls had, 5 shots off target for both teams, 4 shots that was blocked compared to 3 that the Redbulls had. Possession-wise, 58% possession compared to 42% possession that the Redbulls had. So, yeah, for Houston, like I said, this was a much-needed win for them, even though technically they were facing against a Red Bull team that did decided to, Chris Armistice decided to kind of rotate his team a little bit, but yeah, not only it did not work, but it might even cost him even more heading into the weekend game. But that being said, let me now move on into the next game and actually going to switch board to take a look at the last 4 games of this weekend. But yeah, next up, RSL. So they got a 1-0 victory over Columbus at home. Although Mike Pecky said that after this game, he was not happy with the way his team play, and that he was kind of left a little bit frustrated about the way this team play after this game. And I don't blame him, because this was an ugly win for RSL. This was a very unconvincing win at home for them, and that this felt like it was just one of those games where RSL, all they need to do is show up against a team that is one of the worst in the league, and they get all 3 points, and that somehow they just snatch a goal and get all 3 points. And that is exactly what happened in this game, as Sam Johnson scored the only goal from Herrera to give RSL the 1-0 lead in the first half. But that was pretty much it, because in the second half, they couldn't really create a lot of chances, and that the attack just looked very disjointed for RSL in this game. And I understand this Columbus team, what they were trying to do is try to be compact in terms of defending and maybe grind out a 0-0 draw, knowing the fact that they can't really do anything going forward on the attack. But still, you would think RSL should have done maybe a little bit better on the attack, but they didn't do that, and that, it was a very unconvincing win for them, and a win that you would definitely still question of the fact that whether or not if this team is good enough when they play against the big boys. Like, I have a feeling if they play like this in this upcoming Saturday game against the Quakes, yeah, they are not gonna win. Like, It's one thing to try to be scrappy against a bad team and able to get 3 points by just scoring a goal and winning 1-0, but it's another to try to be scrappy and sloppy against a very good team. And that Saturday game against the Quakes on the road will be one that they're going to be tested on, and that if they, like I said, if they play like this against the Quakes, they are most likely going to lose that game. But in terms of shots in this game, RSL had 14 shots compared to 7 that Columbus had. 3 shots on goal compared to none that Columbus had. 7 shots off target compared to 6 that RSL had. 5 shots that was blocked compared to none that Columbus had. And possession-wise, 55% possession compared to 45% possession. And, you know, despite the fact it was a sloppy victory, at least RSL keep pace with those 5 teams that is chasing for those 4 spots in the playoffs, and that, you know, now they're back above the red line after this win. And as for Columbus, yeah, this was not a big surprise, the fact that they couldn't really do anything on the attack, because any other player that still kind of resembled this attack, and that some of those key players that they are missing on the attack that at least give them goals, were not available in this game because of injuries and suspension, or because of international duty. So yeah, it was always going to be a game where Columbus, I don't think that they are going to score a goal unless if there's some crazy thing happen, or just some crazy deflection happen to Columbus, because their attack is basically completely decimated because of players that is injured and currently on international duty. But moving on into the next match is Dallas. So Dallas, of course, they got a victory over DC United in this, and just like RSL, they keep pace with those 5 teams that is just bunched up in the Western Conference in terms of the playoff spot and just below the red line. And in the first half, Mosquera got the goal scoring started with Dallas from Brisson and Hollinshead. That gives Dallas the 1-0 lead. Then in the 33rd minute, it looked like DC was going to go down to 10 men after Wayne Rooney originally was sent off because of a challenge on Barrios, but when they go look at VAR, they found out that that challenge by Rooney was not worthy of a red card. And I think it was a good decision by the referee to rescind that red card and basically give him a yellow card instead, because, well, in real time, it definitely looked like it was an ugly challenge and maybe right on the borderline of right on the borderline of being a red card. I think when you look on the replay and when you look at slow motion, it feels like that maybe should have been a deserved yellow card instead of a sending off. And the old saying goes, it does look much worse in real time than it is in slow motion, and this is a classic example of that. So Rooney was lucky he didn't get sent off in this game, and instead he got a yellow card for that challenge on Barrios. But in the second half, Bocci, of course, doubled the lead for Dallas to give them a 2-0 lead. And unfortunately, in the second half for DC, they weren't so lucky with players that of course, made a nasty kind of challenge, but they were able to get reascended their red card to be a yellow card. And actually, in this instant, when Lucho Acosta, of course, stomped on Paxton Palmico in this instant, originally Acosta didn't even get a red card on this. I think he didn't even get like a card on this, which was kind of surprising because it was obvious as daylight that Acosta clearly stomped on Palmico. But they look at VAR, they found out that incident, and Lucho Acosta, of course, was giving his marching order, and DC, of course, was down to 10 men, and at that point, yeah, it was pretty much over. And to be fair, it was kind of over when Dallas, of course, get that second goal, because DC, I think this is now the 7 straight games in a row that they have not scored more than 1 goal. This attack is struggling right now, and it doesn't help the fact that now one of the players that is supposed to be a playmaker and supposed to be the goal scorer for this team, Lucho Acosta, now getting sent off and get suspended in the next game. So for Dallas, of course, they get the 3 points, and in terms of the shots in this game, they had 24 shots compared to 8 that DC had. And, you know, they definitely had a lot of chance, Dallas, and this was also another example of the fact that they kind of lacked that clinical finishing, but still they got the goals that they need to get in this game. So I don't think they really mind the fact that they probably could have made this a little bit more uglier, and that could have been 3 or 4-0 in this. They had 9 shots on goal compared to 1 that DC had, 9 shots off target compared to 4 that DC had, 5 shots that was blocked compared to 3 that DC had. Possession-wise, 58% possession compared to 42% possession that DC has. So, like I said, for Dallas, it's a good victory for them. They keep pace with teams that is in that tight Western Conference race for the playoffs. And for DC, yeah, there has to be a lot of concern, and there is got to be right around the stage of panic with DC right now, because this team simply just cannot score right now. Like these last couple of games, they have only scored like 1 goal every single game, and the longer this drags on, the more concern I have with DC dropping down in terms of the Eastern Conference, because right now, remember how this team was in first place of the Eastern Conference? Yeah, they're now dropping to 3rd place, and I think if it wasn't for Atlanta not losing big against Chicago, or New York doesn't lose big against Houston in that game, they probably would have found themselves in 4th or 5th place, because I think they're not that. I know for a fact that NYCFC is literally right behind the tail, and so is Atlanta and the Redbulls right behind the tail of DC United. And that, yeah, if this drought continue, and if this winless run that DC, well, not really winless run, but if this kind of bad run of form that DC is in that is going to continue, then they are going to fall in the Eastern Conference standings. But moving on into the next match, as this pen is kind of dying a little bit as I'm writing on this notebook, is the Galaxy. So the Galaxy also got themselves a 2-0 win against TFC in this one. And in the first half, there was no score in this game, although they could have got the first goal when I think it was Fabio Alvarez had an open net to shoot at, and somehow in some way he hits the post. Like I have no idea how in the world is he not able to score that when he had a gaping hole and an open net to shoot at, and that he basically just hit the post on that. So the Galaxy should have been 1-0 at that point. Then in the second half, there was chances for both teams to get the first goal. The Galaxy, a couple of times were threatening, including a cross that was coming to Zlatan, who was open in the 18-yard box, and 9 out of 10 times when Zlatan is open in the 18-yard box and get a free header, he's going to bury that one. But he didn't bury the one around the 55th minute. TFC also had a couple of chances of their own, but Bingham, of course, comes up big with those saves. And then eventually Zlatan did open the scoring from Efrain Alvarez to give the Galaxy a 1-0 lead, and this, of course, was from a header, and that he kind of redeemed himself after missing an open header in the 55th minute here in the second half. And then eventually Zlatan basically shut the door on TFC chances of coming back when he scores from Coelho and Corona to give the Galaxy a 2-0 lead. And that is the final score in this game, as the Galaxy had 16 shots compared to 12 that TFC had, 4 shots on goal compared to 5 that TFC had. Both teams had 6 shots off target, 6 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that TFC had. And possession-wise, TFC did had 60% possession compared to 40% possession, but LA was much better in terms of possession, and that they, of course, was just a little bit more clinical than TFC has. So, yep, it's a good 3 points for the Galaxy, and it's another game where they kind of got bailed out a little bit by Zlatan. I mean, it wasn't an impressive victory, and it wasn't a vintage kind of performance, but at this stage with the Galaxy, kind of struggle a little bit in terms of form. And knowing the fact that they got they got El Tráfico coming soon against their hated rival LAFC in the upcoming weeks, this will definitely be a little bit boost and a little bit momentum heading into that game. In fact, I think El Tráfico is not this weekend's action, but I think it's the following weekend. That's when El Tráfico, of course, happens. But yeah, next up, and actually, it's the final game of this 4th of July midweek action. I was thinking that there was actually going to be 12 games in the midweek 4th of July action, but this is the final game of this week that I'm going to be reviewing, and the final game that I'm going to be reviewing is the longest game of the season, and that this was the game that took more than 5 hours to complete, and the reason why it took that long to complete is because we had 3 weather delay in this game. And the first weather delay started in the beginning of the game when they were originally going to start it at 7 o'clock, but because of lightning around the area, they pushed the kickoff time an hour late and started at 8 o'clock instead. Then when the game started, Bunbury scores from Castile to give New England a 1-0 lead. So Edgar Castile obviously haunting his team with an assist from Bunbury to give New England a 1-0 lead. But then 20 minutes later, the game went into another weather delay, and there was once again lightning around the area, and they didn't restart play until 10:10 in the evening local time. And keep in mind, this is actually Mountain Time, not Eastern Time. So by then, this was already at 1 in the morning. And I'll tell you what, not only I gotta give props to those New England fans that stay up to 2 in the morning to watch this team play, or not, well, is it 2 in the morning? Yeah, 2 in the morning to watch this team play and basically watch this team get a victory against the Rapids. I also got to give a lot of credit to those Rapids fans that stayed till the end of this game, because originally I know this game was supposed to be kind of like close to a sold out crowd because of the fireworks, but then once the fireworks was canceled because of the lightning storm, there was still a lot of people there. But as we go into after the third delay happened, and after when it restarted, there wasn't really a lot of fans still left at Dick's Sporting Goods Parks, but the one that is still left there, I really want to salute you, and really kind of they should be like the man of the match in terms of them sticking through 5 hours of watching this team that unfortunately ultimately lose at the end to the New England Revolution. But we had that second weather delay in the 28th minute, and the game did restart around 10:10, but it didn't take long before we went into a third weather delay. Yup. In the 35th minute, there was another weather delay, and honestly, whoever decided that when the game resumed at 10:10 p.m. and whoever thought that it was a great idea to restart the game and only stop it 7 minutes later seriously needs to be criticized and probably need to be fired, because how in the world do you literally decide to restart the game and then 7 minutes later you basically say, oh wait, there's still lightning around the area? And I also heard that when they restarted the game, there was still lightning storm around the area. It would have been very dangerous for those players to play once that second weather delay is over. And also the fans in the stands, I mean, they could have easily been struck by lightning if the people that is in charge of this would realize that, hey, I know we're trying to get this game going, but at the same time, if you still have lightning storm around the area and we can only get 7 minutes of action into this game, yeah, how about let's not actually send the players back out and also send the fans back into the stands to watch this game. So we had our third weather delay in the 35th minute, and the game didn't restart until 11:05 Mountain Time and right around 1:05 Eastern Time. And I think after the third weather delay, I just have a feeling that this is going to be a huge... Now it's really a huge advantage for New England, because a lot of teams, when they go to Colorado, one of the biggest challenge of facing Colorado on the road is obviously the altitude, and that you are going to get fatigued after 60 minutes if you're than any other place that you have in MLS, and that Colorado is... The stadium is the highest elevation stadium in MLS, and the fact that New England has been able to be gift wrapped it because of the fact that Mother Nature decided to not be a friend of Colorado in this game. That's why I thought the advantage was really started to shift New England, and that they have chances to make adjustment in terms of what they can do for the remaining of the game. So yeah, at that point I I was thinking that even though New England was on the road, it felt like they're kind of like the home team. And not to also mention the fact that nobody actually was there after the game kicked off at 11:05 and after the third weather delay happened. Yeah, this kind of felt like it's kind of like a closed door kind of game, which when you have like a closed door kind of game, you know, either team can of course win the game, because many times one of the reasons why home team always win in MLS is because they have the fans support in the background to help them carry them to get all 3 points. But in this situation, that is exactly not the case for Colorado after that third weather delay happened. So when the game kicked off, there was really nothing happened for the last 10 minutes. And then we had only an 8-minute break for halftime. And the reason why they decided to shorten it is because, well, players are literally getting back on the field and they only play for 10 minutes. I'm pretty sure they're not going to need to have a full 15-minute break. And they don't need, like, more time to be in the break room than they are playing in that 10-minute spell that we had after the third weather delay happened. So yeah, that's why they only had 8 minutes for break at halftime. And then in the second half, New England doubled their lead when Caicedo scores from Carlos Hill to give them a 2-0 advantage. But Colorado started to really threatening after that, and that they almost got the equalizer about a couple of minutes ago when Matt Turner made an absolute beautiful save. And Matt Turner was big in this game. Like he really made a couple of key saves that really preserved the lead for New England in this game. But unfortunately, he didn't save the one when Rubio, of course, was able to head it in from Mosqueda to give Colorado some life in this game. And that is also another set piece goal and another corner goal that Colorado has scored. Like, seriously, I think they probably have now scored the most goals on the set piece this season, and probably have scored the most goal from the header this season, because it seemed like every single game doing this unbeaten run, they have at least scored a goal from a corner. And here we go again with Rubio, of course, scoring a goal from a header from a corner. And like I said, that gave Colorado some life in this game, and they continue to try to get that second goal, but Matt Turner does a good job to make some big save. And finally, at 12:20 a.m. Mountain Time and 2:20 a.m. Eastern Time, this game comes to an end, and it was New England with a 2-1 victory over Colorado. And in terms of the shots in this game, Colorado had 17 shots compared to 13 that New England has, 4 shots on goal compared to 5 that New England has, 8 shots off target compared to 6 that New England had, 5 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that New England has, and New England had 53% possession compared to 47% possession. And right now, New England, yeah, you betcha that this is a team that has just completely revitalized. Like, we talked about how Colorado has been a team that's been revitalized. Don't forget about New England too. And the scary thing about New England is that while they're on this good run, and that it's mostly thanks to Bruce Arena once again working his magic and working his MLS 1.0 kind of magic with this team. But the scary thing about New England is that I'm hearing there's rumor that they're going to bring in more attackers and they're going to spend a lot of money to improve this team. Yeah, watch out for this New England team, because this team can really be a threat in the Eastern Conference, and that this can definitely be a team that you definitely do not want to face heading into the playoffs if they do get into the playoffs. And as for Colorado, you know, it's a frustrating game, and obviously the weather delay did not help their cause whatsoever, but I think they should be proud of the unbeaten run that they had going. Although, like I said, with the Quakes, since they didn't win this game and that everybody around them actually picked up points, they lose some ground in terms of that playoff race, and that they need to try to shake off this loss and try to bounce back and hopefully continue to try to chase down a couple of teams. Like, if they can continue what they are doing in these previous game, in these next couple of games, that I think there is no doubt that Colorado would eventually find themselves heading above the playoff line. But that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time, and I of course will be seeing you guys again for the review of this weekend game on Sunday.